All right, HyperFast Nation, we've got a special guest today on the show, an Olympian who's gone from rowing to real estate and has built an amazing real estate business, investment business, as well as podcast production business. So he's got a little of everything going on and crushing it. Welcome to the show, Hans Struzyna. Welcome to the show, Hans. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, tell the listeners where you're calling in from, by the way, since we're doing this on Zoom land.
Yeah, Zoom land galore. I've got my nice little office set up because who knows how much longer we'll be in Zoom land. But the office is located here in the Bay Area, East Bay specifically. So it's Alameda, which is a small island right next to Oakland. But we're here in San Francisco Bay Area where winters are bright and sunny and summers are cold and windy.
All right, so we are coast to coast today on the HyperFast show. Before we jump in and talk about real estate and all that great stuff, why don't you give our listeners and viewers a little bit of background on who you are, how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, man. Well, so the short-ish version here is my name's Hans again, Hans Struzyna, and I in a previous life was a athlete, not the professional kind, though I put in a lot of hours and into my sport. I was a rower, so I rowed competitively at a really high level and ultimately made it to the Olympics in 2016 and competed with Team USA, where we finished fourth in the men's 8. And that was a big part of my story and still is, of course. But then after came back from Rio, took a year off and got into real estate, which we can talk about, and thought, it would be flexible. It'd be something I could learn in the meantime, potentially go back and train for Tokyo, which, as we all know, still hasn't happened yet. So that worked out all right. But I got into some short sales and doing some foreclosure stuff to really cut my teeth, and did pretty well in that relatively, and for the first couple of years, and then found my way onto the Gunderman Group, which is the number one team here in the East Bay. And last year we did just over 200 million of transactions, and which some of the mega teams out there may not sound like a ton, but the next highest team in our geography, I think, is, just over 100 million. And then most people are, not even quite at 100 million. So we're, relatively speaking, do quite a bit of volume in our marketplace.
So from rowing to real estate.
You got it.
What was it like coming in fourth? Because that's pretty good. Only 3 people in the world beat you, but
yeah,
like just off the medal stand.
Yeah, man. I mean, for that reason, it was bitter. We went in with the credentials, with the stuff, if you will, on paper to be in the medal stand, and that's what we lined up on that day with our goal and trying to do. And simply, anyone who has ever raced at a high level like that can tell you, it just comes down to execution, 1 or 2%, or sometimes less. And that's it. That's the difference at that level. And we were just off that little bit, and hence the 4th place result. So in my opinion, we did not have our very best race. We were on average the youngest crew, except maybe there was one other that was on average younger than us, but we were one of the youngest crews by age, and everyone knows in that sport that as you spend more time in it, you have more experience at the high levels. Generally speaking, you perform better. So we just didn't quite hit it on that day. And yeah, that was on a personal level, that was a really tough one to swallow, and took me honestly a year and a half of some therapy and coaching and all of that sort of stuff to kind of overcome what I perceived as a massive failure in my life at that time.
How many guys are in the boat there?
It depends on the boat class, of course,
Yeah.
but I was in the men's 8. So it was 8 rowers and then the one coxswain. So
Okay.
that was the event that most people think of when they, at least in this country, when they think about rowing.
What distance are you going on that
2K, so
2K?
2,000 meters, so just over a mile.
Gotcha. And I'm just curious because I don't like what's the time that takes, the race.
The world record in that event for the men's 8 is just under 5 minutes and 20 seconds. And, depends on the race course, how hot the water is, the wind, etc. Most of those races are going down in about 5.5 minutes.
Gotcha. So it's I'm sure you put in like thousands of hours of training cumulative, and then it boils down to 5.5 minutes. And like what separated you from the third place guy? Like a second or two? Or
yeah, it was something like that. I honestly don't know off the top of my head. I know it was less than 2 seconds, maybe over 1 second. But yeah, it really was tight. And 5th place was, I don't know, I think they were a quarter second behind us. So you can imagine it's all pretty tight racing. And that's where that kind of 1% thing comes into play. When you miss it 1%, that's a second over, 200 strokes or so.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of parallels, I think, between that and business and life and in general. Just you look at the hours you put in and then the performance, getting all the teammates on the same page, and that cliche saying about life being a game of inches, I think, from that movie with Al Pacino. And I don't know what kind of lessons do you think you learned from it that translated over into what you do now?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. When you focus on, let's just say, one negotiation or one moment, it's very parallel, because you prepare, you read your comps, you negotiate, you set up the inspections, you do all the things that you need to do. That kind of comes down to this like negotiation that sometimes happens in the matter of an hour or less. And sometimes it's, one phone call and that's it, right? So you've got that split second to perform. The difference is, as you go in your career, it's not like, well, with the Olympics, it's every 4 years, or in this case, they've had to go an extra year. So 5 years with COVID. But it's every 4 years, and you get that 5.5 minutes effectively to prove your quadrennial. And so when you really boil it down, it's like, man, there's a lot of pressure on that one moment. Whereas in business, you get, as long as you're kind of in the flow of business, you get sort of multiple opportunities, and not one opportunity necessarily is going to define your career. So from that perspective, it's a little different, and honestly is nice because it's taken some pressure off. However, the stuff that is translated from my rowing career to my real estate career is, a lot of it, but in particular is being coachable, taking criticism, applying the lessons I learned immediately so I don't make the same mistake twice, and then finding mentors who've been there, whether it's indirectly through things like podcasts and books, or obviously joining a team that has just a high producing leader set, and learning as much as I can from those guys. Like, that has been hugely invaluable. And then on sort of a one-off, negotiation standpoint, physically being uncomfortable, because we all know negotiations can be physically uncomfortable, but I've been able to perform in very physically uncomfortable situations. So applying the tactics that I learned, in sport, to apply it to a negotiation to keep myself in the game long enough to succeed is kind of an intangible one that I like to talk about as well, and think that I think it helps me when it comes down to actually getting it done for the client.
Yeah, I think, a lot of what you said is really a good reason why, real estate agents entrepreneurs, really everyone should go out and do things that physically and mentally challenge you. And we might not all be preparing for the Olympics, one in every 4 years
Right.
shot with the whole world watching, but there's much smaller versions of that then strengthen you, when you go back to business. So,
and people talk about the Olympics and they see the title and they look at, we watch it on NBC once every 4 years and the trumpets go and it's this cool thing for 2 or 4 weeks with the lead up and the follow up and all that stuff. Right. And then we kind of go back to it. But, what I tell people all the time is like, it took a lifetime of effort to get to that point. And you're seeing literally like a 1 week of 12 years of work in my case. And in most of the athletes' case, like that's what you're watching. And we weren't all born Olympians. In fact, none of us were. We all kind of worked our way there one way or another. And so the thing that I think I did well in my career was always focusing on whatever that next step was. So it was, starting rowing, getting into the JV boat, the second boat. Like that was a goal of mine at one point. And then making the varsity and then going to college and you name it, whatever that next step was. So though people aren't necessarily closing a $10 million deal today or, training for the Olympics today, like what's that next step, that your version of the Olympics, what's the next big thing you can get to? And then how can you break it down to get to that level? And if you can do that effectively, I think you become pretty dangerous as a business person and as an agent or whatever you're pursuing. And it honestly can build on itself faster than I'm sure you would have expected otherwise.
Are you still training or thinking about, making a run at the, I guess it would be 2021 Olympics?
Yeah. No, I really gave myself until October of 2018, but to make a decision on that. And I really thought about it a lot. I went back and forth. I said, I've been there. And this was part of my process of coming through the loss and what I deemed as a failure, but simply I've been to the top. I've seen what it takes. I really know that I put in the effort and had the results to medal. Like we could have medaled and we knew it. But I just don't have the physical medal. And is my life going to be so drastically improved to spend another, 3 years and change to go get it? And so I just said, there's a lot of mountains to climb out there. And ultimately I decided I wanted to go climb a new mountain and hence why I'm in real estate and doing entrepreneur stuff and starting a life and doing some different things. So no, I'm not training any longer, but I still stay in touch with a lot of the guys who are.
Well, that's cool to hear that you were able to go through that process and make that transition into real estate. Now you said your team did 200 million last year. What were your individual numbers?
So interestingly enough, I had a goal of hitting 30 million. I listened to one of your more recent shows about goal setting. I think it was right around the new year. And so I set a goal in 2020 of hitting 30 million in closed volume. The year before that was 20 million and I didn't quite hit it. I was at like 19 and change. And I had something in escrow that didn't close until 2020. So I didn't count it, but hit 30. And then shockingly, I through my last negotiation of the year, we negotiated and the price moved a couple of times and we got it into contract and I put it in my spreadsheet and the spreadsheet said 30 million on the nose. And so I looked and I did the math manually and I was like, oh shoot, I guess I did 30. So I did 30 million on the nose exactly. And then did, some other stuff outside of real estate business wise, but that was my production for 2020.
And what are you doing outside of real estate now, since you brought it up?
So I also like to invest on the side. So I buy small multifamily. My wife and I own 2 duplexes right now. We're looking to kind of go into slightly bigger asset class, 4, 6, 8, 10 unit world. But we just started with those just because they were a good way because we managed them out of state and from a distance. So we had to kind of learn the ropes of management from 800 miles away kind of thing. So we do that, and that's been a lot of fun and is definitely starting to yield some good results. We just refinanced our first property and pulled all the cash out of it. So now we're ready to go buy another one. The old Burr method. And then I also, during the pandemic, started a podcast post-production company with a couple of co-podcasters called Streamlined. And now we're starting to scale that up. And simply we realized that there was a much more cost-effective way to post-produce episodes, because there was hellishly expensive to get someone on Fiverr or a professional to do it. And we realized we could marry some human being effort and some technology effort together to basically cut the costs per episode in half. And so we proved it out with our own shows. And then we're now, just over 50 people and really starting to, or 50 clients that is, and starting to really scale that effort up, which has been a ton of fun, and looking into other post, YouTube and some other post-production things that we can do for people as well.
So what are people buying? Is it a product or a service to make the?
It's a service.
Podcast?
So simply, our goal is, you hit record, you hit stop, you send us the raw audio, and the rest is taken care of. So we take out all the ahs and the ums, the background noise, the mixing and mastering, the ID3 tagging, your show notes, your title creation, your social media graphics. It's all done in-house, with a pretty tight, quick turnaround of 48 hours or less in some cases, but we try and hit it in 48 hours. And then basically you can be as hands-off as you want. And all you got to do is focus on getting guests, producing content, doing your solo shows, whatever it is. And you can do it for longer because our cost model is much, much lower. I mean, we're at, in some cases, depending on volume, in the $40 an episode range for all of that. And so your dollars go further, and you can keep podcasting or keep yourself in the game long enough to build your audience and really get your message out there.
Well, that's exciting to see, and definitely something I think is going to, we're just seeing the beginning growth of it, and I expect to see more. So I'm sure that's going to be, a wonderful product, service that you're able to produce.
And real quick, we're taking sort of pre-orders for a physical product, which we got a lot of people asking, like, what equipment do I need? What software do I need? Whatever. And so we're building out a product that you can buy. We're calling it Pod Box. It's simply a podcast in a box. And if you buy it, it'll come with the microphone, the boom arm, headphones, all the software, the information, the booklet, and post-production services for your first month of episodes. So it's literally everything that you need in order to get your show up and running and get yourself out of the gate, because so many people just, for whatever reason, struggle to get that thing started. And so we want to reduce that barrier even further for people to get their message out there and experience the power of podcasting for themselves.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, it kind of takes away the excuses that a solo agent or someone that doesn't have a ton of resources, might think. So it's cool to see that there's a product out there for really anyone, and you guys are kind of democratizing the whole production of podcast. So let's go back to the real estate investments. You said you've picked up a couple. They're out of state. What state are you guys buying in? Oh, hello?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Can you repeat that question? It just cut out for just a second there.
Sure.
Catch the whole thing.
Yep. No, I was saying, what state did you guys did you and your wife buy your investment properties in?
So I'm originally from Seattle, Washington area. I went to University of Washington and then moved to California after college to row. And we wanted to buy locally. We really originally wanted to house hack. We wanted to, get a duplex and rent the other half out and do the whole thing. But the Bay Area prices, especially for where we were at financially at the time, were just prohibitive in doing that. And so we started looking out of the area and then out of state. And we were really close to buying tickets to go to Kansas City because we heard that at the time was a really good market. And I knew someone there at the time. And we were like, wait a second, if we buy this plane ticket and get an Airbnb, we're going to knock out half a year of cash flow by just doing that once a year. So what's the point of that? So then we realized we got to go somewhere we already go anyways. So I was like, oh, wait, Tacoma, Washington. That seems like a pretty good opportunity. So we started looking there, and sure enough, the numbers worked for what we were looking for. And the side benefit is we now write off all of our trips up there because we always go shop real estate. We always go visit our properties anyways, and we just roll those trips together. And then, spend half a day or a day, looking at new opportunities, managing our current rentals. And that's what we've been doing thus far.
Was it hard to get into, to pull the trigger on the first ones? I think a lot of people, like, doing their first deal or their first investment, it's just something new and unknown, and it seems a lot scarier than it is.
Yeah. In retrospect, it was, the numbers just work, right? If the numbers work, the numbers work, but you don't know if the numbers work until, frankly, you underwrite 30 or 50 properties at least. And so my wife was way better at this than I was, but she was saying, like, let's just run 5 properties through our little spreadsheet a night. And then we can go watch Netflix afterwards. And we found this deal after, a week or two of doing this. So we had underwritten a handful to know, what's good and what's bad in that market. And we found this one that had been sitting for like 9 months, and the numbers worked. It needed a ton of work, but the sellers had discounted it to the level that, basically 50 or 60 grand below the comps because it needed about 50 or 60 grand of work. And so we're like, what's the deal on this one? And we underwrote it. We made an offer subject to us doing a walkthrough. We flew up there, did a walkthrough, and realized that this seemed like a really good deal. And so then we were under contract, and away we went. And it ended up being not so much a challenge to make that offer, because I, at the time, of course, I'm a real estate agent. So I know that process pretty well. I know the contingencies you can get out of them, et cetera. But the real challenging part was I was also flipping a house at the time here locally. And so I had, almost 600 or 700, 600 grand tied up in a hard money loan and in the, fixing up the property. And so I was literally down to my last couple $1,000s, and she was the one, buying it because she had the work history for her 1099. And, there was a moment there where we were like, are we making a totally idiotic mistake by putting all of our money in this duplex in Tacoma? And then we've got all this money out on this flip. And that was honestly the hardest moment, because we had to just decide, like, are we going to be bold and invest in the future right now? Or are we going to play safe and hold on to it and try and get out of this contract? And ultimately we just decided, like, let's go for it. I think this will work and make it happen. And we pulled the trigger, sheepishly. And gosh, I'm so glad we did, because it was, like I told you earlier in the episode, we just pulled all of our cash out of that and are about to, recycle that money again. So I can tell you that first one was really hard. But once you do the first one, assuming you've done enough diligence to know it's a good deal, it will just start to snowball and get really fun after that.
Yeah. I think going broke by making investments is one of the best ways to get rich. And I've heard this from a lot of different people, and it's something I believe in. Like you make some money, right? Did some sales, did some flips, and then get rid of it. Like get it out of your bank account, get it into like a good investment. You know, don't blow it on something that's really high risk, or you know, you didn't do the numbers right. So you got to make sure it's good. Yeah, or car. But you know, once you saw that bank account go down to zero or close to it, like you were out hustling to get some more deals, right? To refill it.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting. Like when you kind of put your goals out there, like one of our goals has been and remains to be financial freedom. How do we turn our active income into cash flow or passive income so that, you know, we can cover our living expenses and not necessarily have to work, right? And that's through we're choosing rentals and as our main vehicle for that. And so when you really put that as your goal and you recognize that you're playing a long-term game here, I think it can change your outlook. Like if you really want to be somebody, whether you're selling real estate, investing in real estate, whatever, who's trying to get rich in 30 days, sell, 30 homes in 30 days, like all that Instagram crap that we see out there, like you're going into it with the totally wrong mentality, in my opinion. You need to think, I use this analogy a lot, but a marathon, a world record marathon is just under 2 hours, but you're also running, sub 6 minute miles for 2 hours. Like a good marathon is 3 hours
sub 5
or sub 5. Geez, okay, you're a marathoner. I'm not. Whatever it is, right? So, but it still takes a long time. And if you're really willing to look at something as like, there's a minimum amount of time I got to put into this, so I might as well maximize that time. Maybe you hit it rich the first try, but realistically, if you're willing to put it in, 5-10 years of effort, it's almost inevitable that you will succeed and you will get what you want because the numbers just don't lie on those.
What do you look for in an investment? Because I think too many real estate agents, or not enough, I should say, invest in real estate, which is unfortunate.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree.
What do you think real estate agents should look for in investments? What do you look for?
I mean, if you can be in your local market, meaning take advantage of, pocket listings of your local network of vendors, of contractors, of inspectors, like, your local market, hopefully pretty well. And so if that's a place that, cash flows positively for you, or you can figure out how to cash flow positively, then you should absolutely do that. In my opinion, it's cash flow first. And that, well, I'm not going to say anyone's wrong for doing appreciation. I'm just personally where I'm at in life. What we want to do is build little ATM machines and have cash flow. And so I'm looking, for a minimum of like $200 to $300 a door as like a really rough back of the napkin number to say, is this something that I can dive a little bit more time in after all the expenses, the mortgage, saving for the CapEx, et cetera? Can I get at least $200 to $300 a door? And then it's like, okay, that checks that box. Now what, now how much deeper can we go on this? So for me, it's really not rocket science. It's just like, can I get to $200 to $300 a door? And then how much do I have to buy those doors for? And then does it make sense? Right. And so everyone can be different, but we've just tried to simplify it to that level, simply as a first pass. But I'm always looking for how can I maximize the cash flow so that I can start to offset some of my, mortgage, offset groceries, offset all insurance, all of that stuff. So that if I have a down month, or if I want to go on vacation for a month from my real estate practice, I'm not going to be hurting financially by doing something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great goal for any agent getting started out there, is just like figure out, how many doors, how many units, whatever it is, do I need to own in order to pay for my lifestyle, right? And then work towards it, right? It might might not get there in a year or two, or, it might take 3,
Right.
4, or 5, but, work towards that first number. And then that's going to, I think, really give you the base to expand.
Right.
You can start doing stuff like you're doing, like, refi, pull the cash out, get something else.
Now, of course, if you can create equity for yourself, which, that's another conversation, but if you can buy something that's dilapidated or has a tenant who's been smoking in it, or has someone who just hasn't been raising the rents, and you can come in and paint it and do some new carpet and jack the rents up to $1,000 when they've been at 600, then great. That's even better, because now not only has your cash flow improved, but you've also improved the equity position. And what we're talking about there is, let's just say you buy it for 200. Now it's worth 400. You can get a refinance, especially with rates the way they are right now. Good Lord. But you can get a refinance, pull 60 grand out of that thing, and go take that and put that as the down payment on the next thing. And then you can recycle it every year or every 2 years or whatever the case is, and do that a couple of times, so that first $60,000 down payment plus the reno or whatever you put in, you can just take that out and do it again, take it out, do it again. So you only got to make that money once, and then you just recycle.
Yeah, I love it. It's always I always enjoy talking to other agents doing it, and hopefully this conversation will inspire more agents out there to start acquiring investment properties.
And lastly, the IRS looks at you as a real estate professional anyways. So now all of your depreciation and all of the stuff that would otherwise for most people be a passive loss is now an active loss. So it will shield, potentially, depends on your loss percentage and all that, but it can shield commission income from taxes. And it's like, there's 4 different ways you can literally have a bottom line boost from real estate, and cash flow is just one of those 4. So, there's so many reasons to at least have a rental property, if not more, in my opinion, as a real estate agent.
And the depreciation can be huge, especially under the current tax law. I had someone on a previous episode who just specialized in this one aspect of depreciation, but through a cost segregation study, you can actually take like much of the depreciation. I think on average it's like 30% you can take in year 1. So
dude, I did that.
A $500,000 property, you're able to write off like 150K of income in year 1.
We did that. We did a cost segregation study on both of our properties last year, and we got money back on taxes. Like, we literally didn't pay taxes last year. And for self-employed people who were this year, we weren't quite in the top tax bracket, but we're darn close last year. To not pay taxes as self-employed people in the state of California is unheard of, right? And we were able to do that last year because of that strategy. So, it's absolutely, there's so much power in having real estate with the way the tax code is written right now. And it may be changing under the new administration a little bit. So talk to your CPA, but gosh, there's so many ways to get creative and use that to your advantage. And I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, there could, and we'll see what happens. There could be a flurry of, real estate asset purchases the end of this year if something changes. But
for sure.
So keep an eye on that. It's been really cool to just see all that you've gone on and how you transition from rowing to real estate and investing. So I think this has been a really great story, and I think it hopefully has inspired a lot of people out there. Before we wrap up, I always like doing the HyperFast round. If you're ready for some rapid fire questions,
bring it.
All right. What's your biggest piece of advice to a new real estate agent?
Get into somebody's slipstream who's performing at a level and more importantly, even has a business and a lifestyle that you would want to emulate. Is that
slipstream like a rowing term? Like get in the wake that they created, or something?
Yeah, get in their wake, get a draft behind them, get on their team, get them as a mentor, whatever you got to do. because success leaves clues.
What's your biggest piece of advice to a first-time real estate investor?
Don't make an offer until you've underwritten at least 30 deals, if not more like 50 in a given market. And then because you don't know what a good deal and a bad deal looks like until you've done that.
What's the biggest challenge you've had in business, and how did you respond to it or overcome it, or what did you learn from it?
My biggest challenge in business is probably the inner game between my ears, meaning like my own mindset. And the way that I continue to fight that battle, to use that analogy, is to have coaches. I've joined masterminds. I listen to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of personal development books. I've been to therapy. I've had a life coach. I've invested a lot of money into myself to really hone that skill. Just like when I was rowing, I had coaches. So now I'm getting coaches for this part of my life too.
All right. What do you do in your spare time now when you're not selling real estate or looking for deals?
Oh, geez. My wife is a personal trainer and also an Olympian. And so we work out a lot. Almost every day we work out together. And I really am having a fun time on YouTube right now. So I'm making YouTube videos mostly that are real estate based to support my business, but I'm really kind of enjoying learning that platform and learning how to be better on video. And then other than that, we just bought a house. And so we really it's in a killer neighborhood with awesome neighbors. So I'm really trying to socially socialize as much as we can with the neighbors, because they're such interesting and cool people. So I've been doing a lot of that.
What's your YouTube channel?
You just type in my name, Hans Struzyna, Struzyna, into YouTube, and you'll find me, find my channel, and find some of my rowing stuff inevitably as well.
All right. Last question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Oh man, 5 years. Where I see myself, man, I would love to be even a stronger listing agent than I am. I'm always trying to get better, and I love that side of the business just because of the complexity and just kind of you control the market, and people come to you as opposed to the other way around. So I like that. But I also love the challenge of the numbers, of the presentation, of the disclosures, all of that. It's a big puzzle to put together. So I really want to be, hitting to, get into a personal volume at or in excess of 100 million of predominantly listings in our market. And then I'd really love to have my side business here that I've started with my friends, Streamlined Podcasts. We've considered different exit strategies on that one, but I'd love to have it be at a scale where someone like an Amazon or one of these big, huge names that wants to acquire it, because then it could really scale to another level and help a lot of people get their message out. So we're working towards that. And then I'd also love simply just to have a life in there where it's a big life in business, but it's an even bigger life personally, spending a lot of date nights with my wife, still being able to go hang out with the puppy and hang out with friends socially and all that kind of stuff too.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing that happen and watching you grow, and we'll have to have you come back on and the show to get an update.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to check out the podcast in a box, we're doing some pre-orders, so you can put your email in and we'll notify you when it's ready. But it's streamlinedpodcast.com/PODBOXX. And you can probably find that in the show notes or wherever. I'm sure you guys can put it in, but you should check that out if you ever want to start a podcast. We'd love to help you.
Yeah, we'll definitely get that in the show notes. If people want to connect with you, what other ways can they do that as well?
I spend a lot of time on Instagram now. So Instagram is sort of my other guilty pleasure that I'm calling a business expense. But I'm at Chief Sna, SNAH, which is my first name backwards, on Instagram. So I spend a lot of time there. So DM me. I get back to everyone who sends me a DM, and love to connect with people that way as well.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the show, Hans, and to our listeners out there and people watching on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the HyperFast Show. Subscribe to us if you want to make sure you get the latest and greatest HyperFast shows. And remember, we love reviews. Reviews help us bring better and better guests and improve our shows. So give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you want to see more, click right here. And if you're new to this channel, click below to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss out. And leave some comments about what you think on the videos. I'll see you next time.